And we're live. Welcome to the Splendid Life Show, episode 1 with Dr. Orman. He is a physician, an author, and a speaker. And he has been helping people for over 30 years deal with stress. But he actually doesn't call it stress, he calls it something else. So let's put Dr. Orman on screen right now. Hi, Dr. Orman. Tell us a story about how you became an expert on eliminating stress.
All right. First, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Okay, because I have a little message on the screen that says that they muted my mic.
Oh, no, I can hear
But you can hear me? Okay, great.
Oh, okay,
So you
hold
want to know
on.
what?
Hold on.
No, I think it's okay.
It's okay. All right. You know what is happening? I'm
I have no idea.
hearing a feedback on. I hear my echo. So I'm going to close the other one. Okay, there we go. Sorry for the technical difficulty. What happened was I had embedded the link for the YouTube onto my Chrome player, and there was a delay of broadcasting, but that shows actually we're on air, so that's the good news. Because I could hear myself making the same introduction again. All right, so let's go on with your story. So, how did you become a stress expert?
Well, I became a stress expert by going through medical school and internship and residency, where I learned all about how to have stress. So it's actually they train people. They actually train people on how to be stressed. So I was actually pretty stressed before that, but it just made things worse. So those were some very stressful years, and then when I got into practice, I started noticing that I didn't. A lot of my patients had stress, and it was affecting their health, and so I didn't really know, nothing. I hadn't really learned anything in medical training and how to help people deal with their stress and their life issues. So that got me interested in that particular subject, because I felt that in order to be a complete physician, you should be able to take care of both the medical and the social and psychological aspects of people.
Yeah. Well, so what is your key message to our audience?
I think the main, like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years now, and the message really hasn't changed in 30 years. It's really that each of us is so much better able to deal with stress than when we know we are, or we give ourselves credit for. And the reason why we aren't better, whatever level we're at, some people are at a very high level, some are at a very low level, but the reason why we're not even higher if we're high, or high if we're low, is because we live in a culture where mostly the things that we've been taught to believe about stress aren't really true. And that was the big awakening for me, discovering that most of the stuff I've been taught in medical school and about stress, and the things that I've read in self-help books, and all the things I tried to do to help myself deal with the stress I was struggling with, most of that stuff wasn't really true about stress and about how, what the best ways are to deal with it. So my message is that if you can clear away a lot of those myths and misconceptions that are prevalent in our society, almost everybody can deal with stress much better than they may believe that they can right now. And I've just seen it over and over and again in my own life, with my own struggles and failures dealing with stress, to eventually being able to turn that around and be very successful. And I saw that that's what it was for me, is that I had to let go of some of these ideas that I had been given that were completely inaccurate and took me down the wrong path and didn't allow me to express my natural ability to deal with stress. And then I was able to do the same kinds of things for other people over the years that I've worked with, to help them identify some of the prevalent myths and misconceptions and understand some of the better strategies than managing stress, which I'm not a big proponent of. That's what I enjoy doing.
Uh-huh. So why are you spreading your message? What drives you to do this?
Well, I think it's part of being a physician. I see myself when I do this work, when I'm interacting with people, I see it as true preventive medicine. So we say I spent 23 years treating people once they got sick. You
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
and you always wish you could do something to prevent that, but most of us don't have the skill set or we don't have the knowledge to be able to do true preventive medicine. But what we call preventive medicine in medicine is really early disease detection. So
Oh,
you
okay.
find somebody early on when they have signs of cancer, or you find them early on when they have signs of diabetes or hypertension, and then you try to prevent them from having worse complications. But true preventive medicine would be helping people live life better and have less stress during their life so that they don't end up getting sick in the first place. And so I
Right.
see it as part of my calling as a physician and an opportunity to do real preventive medicine, which I kind of wished I knew how to do when I started out in my practice.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So how is your approach different from other experts
Well,
to
it's different.
stress?
It's different in a lot of ways. Very different. It's like 180 degrees different than what most people do. So, for example, if you came to me in my office for help with stress, okay,
Uh-huh.
the first thing I would do with you is I would tell you you're not allowed to use that word anymore. I would completely eliminate that word from your vocabulary. I would say you cannot call your problem stress. You can't use that word, okay? You have to call it what it is, not what it's not. Okay? And when we say we have stress, what we really mean is we're having certain very specific problems in our life.
Right.
And we tend to lump those problems all together, put it in a big basket, call that basket stress. So
Mhm.
that's why I say I would tell people, first thing I would tell people is you got to get rid of that term, stress. You got to stop thinking that your problem is stress. It's not.
Mhm.
Your
Mhm.
problem is whatever the problems are but you have to really get rid of the word stress before you can start focusing in on them and identifying them individually one by one so that you can start addressing them. So I take a very problem-oriented approach to dealing with stress, and then, like I say, I don't advocate stress management. I mean, I'm not opposed to stress management. I just think it's a very weak, misguided approach to dealing with stress because if you think about it, managing stress mainly is dealing with the symptoms of your problems.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
things like exercise and relaxation, listening to soft music, meditating. A lot of those things just deal with the symptoms of the problems that you're having in your life. They don't help you get at the actual causes. So I like to work with people to help them change their thinking about what their problem is. So I get them to stop thinking it's stress, focus on the problems they're having, and then instead of dealing with the symptoms of those problems, like through stress management, I like to help show them how they can better understand and deal with the causes of their problems in life that they're referring to when they say they have stress. So it's a very different approach than most stress experts take, who mostly will steer people down a stress management path.
Okay. So let's say if I have somebody who has a problem with juggling all kinds of stuff. Let's say, for example, a teenager, and she has like maybe three AP classes and two honors classes, and she's like a team captain of a robotics team, and she has, you know, Chinese dance practice, and she wants to start a sport. Then she feels like, oh my gosh, she doesn't have a lot of time to do all this and still do well in everything. So, what would you advise this person, this teenager, to do?
I would explain to them that the problem is probably their mother. And I'm only half kidding about that. No, I
Okay.
would not do that. I would not do that. I was just joking with you. No, what I would do with someone like that is I would say, well, I would help them to specifically define their problem. So let's say part of their problem is they're overwhelmed with, they've taken on too many things, okay? And we can do that sometimes. We can get ourselves in a situation where we just take on too much. and it's
Mm-hmm.
more than we can comfortably handle. So you got to ask, if you're in that situation, if that's your problem, you got to say, how did I get myself here? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what is it within me? How am I thinking? How am I, what ideas do I have? What beliefs do I have? What theories do I have? What habits do I have that may have gotten me into this trouble when other people might be able to successfully avoid getting into as deep as I'm in now. So I think you have to, any problem in life, you really have to understand the causes of the problem, and you have to be able to look at both the causes outside of you that are external to you, that could be in your society, in your family life, in your school, uh, other requirements that may be placed on you. And then you have to also look at internal causes. So what kinds of thought patterns, behavior patterns are going on within you that may be contributing to the
Mm-hmm.
problem. So
Right.
it's always some of both usually. When people are having problems, it's usually both for external reasons and internal reasons. And you have to be able to identify all the causes, not just half of them. You can't just
Mm-hmm.
focus on the internal and not the external, and you can't just focus on the external and not the internal. You have to know how to do both. But probably one of the things we're really terrible at in our society is focusing on and understanding the internal causes. Everything in our society encourages us to look outside of ourselves to try and understand why we're having the problems that we're having. And that's one of the big things that keeps people stuck, keeps them having stress when they really have the ability to deal with their problems, 10 times better than they give themselves credit for.
Yeah, I
They're
think
just
part of the
missing.
problem is
Yeah.
like I think we want to compare ourselves to others. The
Yeah.
wanting to compare to people.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like put a lot
That's
of
a
pressure.
that's a habit. That's a habit of thought, or it's a
Mm-hmm.
tendency that some people have that is likely to get you in a little bit of trouble or cause certain problems for you, because there's no need to do that. None of us needs to compare ourselves to other people. In fact, you can always make yourself miserable no matter how good you are at anything. You can always find somebody better
Mm.
and compare yourself to that person and end up feeling somewhat, negatively about whatever it is that you've accomplished or who you are or what you've done. So we can always make ourselves feel bad in doing that, but it's a bad habit. That's all it is,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and it's not necessary. And yeah, sometimes it's beneficial. I mean, sometimes if you want to be an Olympic athlete and you want to compare yourself to some of the greats in sports, so to drive you to be the best, it can sometimes be beneficial. But most of the time, for most of us who are not going to be Olympic gold medal champions, it just drives us crazy and causes us to have anxiety and disappointment and other kinds of things that are avoidable. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
Definitely.
that kind of stuff. It's those kind of internal thought patterns and habits of thinking and habits of behaving that contribute to a lot of our stress. We just don't see that dynamic so easily. We don't know how to pinpoint those causes when we're in the middle of those situations and feeling bad. We're constantly looking outside of ourselves, and we haven't been trained to really identify the stuff that's going on inside, which is what you need to do if you want to be really good at solving the day-to-day problems that most of us have.
But now, do you think like the other like stress management techniques, do they bring you maybe to a state where you can actually kind of like look in yourself for the causes, of
Well,
your
there's
problem?
some of them do. There's some. I wouldn't say they're not all symptom oriented, but I would say 90% are. But there's some forms of meditation, for example, where you can retrain your mind, when you can retrain your focus. You actually get to be able to focus more on inward. You get to notice your thoughts more acutely,
Mm-hmm.
your feelings more acutely. You're more centered. So there are all kinds of things that are good from a practice, certain types of meditation. Now you can meditate in other ways that are just like relaxation, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with relaxation. It's just, again, it's not helping you deal with um, the causes. So, for example, if you're in a bad marriage and that's really causing you, quote, stress,
Mm-hmm.
unquote, you can, relax all you want. You can go to the beach all you want, listen to all the soft music you want, but that's not going to fix your marriage. You know, it's not going to help you get at the root causes of what's going on in the marriage that you really need to identify and address if you want things to turn around. So yeah, it can help, help you go through a difficult period, but it's not going to solve the problem per se.
How about like a practice like journaling, where you kind of go inside and kind of dig out what you're thinking or your
Yeah,
emotions, all that stuff?
if you do it in the right context, in other words, if you're journaling to get more insight into what the thought processes are that go on with you kind of automatically,
Mm-hmm.
and you find that by journaling and just letting that stuff pour out uncensored, then you can look at it, you can go like, wow, there's certain patterns here. There's certain
Mm-hmm.
repetitive ways of thinking here that I didn't notice as well as I can see now that I've written them down. Now I can see them more clearly. So yeah, you can get some insight. You can figure out how you automatically tend to think and behave, and that can be very useful because it just helps increase your awareness of the internal stuff that goes on every day and that may be contributing to some of the difficulties you're having. That's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what we need to do. We need to develop a better sense of awareness of those internal causes so that we can put them together with the external causes and get the whole picture.
Right. So
And it's funny,
yeah.
I found in my work with individuals and groups that a lot of times that's all you have to do with people is help them get all the puzzle pieces out on the table
Mm-hmm.
and see them all.
Mm-hmm.
And once they see them, they usually can solve the problem pretty quickly on their own because they have the natural ability to do it. It's just that there were certain parts of the puzzle that they were blind to, that they didn't see were causes, and once they start to see it or you help them to see it, they can usually take the ball and run with it at that point. You don't have to tell them what to do. You don't have to tell them how to fix the problem. They'll
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, I see what the problem is now. Oh, I think I see how I can do about that and what I need to do to fix that. And then they're off and running.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of interesting. That's the hard part. That's where the work is in getting people to have a better appreciation for those internal causes of their stress.
What about those people you said, most of them can resolve it by themselves. So what about those people who just can't can't really see it? What do you do with them?
Well, I never see them as people who can't. I
Hmm.
see them as, I see them as people who have the ability to. These are not difficult things. You don't have to be a psychiatrist or psychologist to understand some of these, expectations that we have and habits that we have. Like you say, comparing yourself to others. You don't have to be an Einstein to understand that pattern of thinking and observe it in yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not. I never see people as not having the ability to do it. If they're not doing it, then there's probably something that's scaring them or something that's blocking them or keeping them from doing it, or maybe they have some thoughts or fears that if they do, it's going to mean this or that, cause this problem or that problem. So there's all kinds of convoluted things that can get in the way of just honestly looking at what you already have been doing all along most of your life. You just haven't been paying attention to it, and somebody's trying to help you do that. So there are some people that are resistant to it, very resistant to it. And unfortunately, you might not be able to help them unless you can figure out a way to get them to let go a little bit of that resistance. And some people will, and some people won't. Sometimes the time is not right. I mean, sometimes people are not willing to make change at a particular point in time, but maybe a year later, 2 years later, things will be different in their life, and they may be more open to it. So I always see people as having the ability, but there may be various things along the way that may interfere with them
Mm-hmm.
taking advantage of that.
Yeah. Um, so who are the people that inspire you, in your work?
Yeah, well, I've been very fortunate. I've had an opportunity to work with or be mentored by a number of very cool people who did inspire me. One was a physician named E. Flazansky when I was going through medical school, who was one of our teachers, and he was a brilliant physician, but he was also a pioneer of the new field of psychosomatic medicine, which was just getting started. The whole mind-body connection was just being really recognized as a branch of medicine. And he was a board-certified internal medicine physician and also a board-certified psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
So he was able to go, in both domains in being a physician, and so he was much of my inspiration for wanting to delve into the psychological aspect of human beings and not just look at people purely from a medical context, which unfortunately you can fall into as a physician. We're kind of trained to do that.
Mhm.
So that was one. There was another person who was actually was named Umberto Maturana, who was a biologist from Chile, and he's an extremely brilliant biologist who has helped to shape some of my understanding of what it means to be a human being and the role of language in our lives, and how language and culture becomes ingrained within us and causes some of these patterns of thinking and habits, behaving and thinking,
Uh-huh.
and how it becomes automatic. We don't even notice that we're doing it, and yet it's causing mischief and trouble in our lives sometimes.
Mm.
So he was very influential. And then there were a number of other mentors in my medical career and people that I've done seminars with and things like that who opened my eyes to like aspects of communication, aspects of human relationships. um, Once I sort of realized that most of what I was taught was incorrect, then I started searching around for, okay, well, what's some of the good stuff? What's some of who are some of the people who have some of the really sound understandings
Uh-huh.
of why we get into some of the common problems we get into, why we get into emotional difficulties, and why we have a hard time dealing with emotions, and who's got a handle on relationships, and who's got a handle on stress at work or stress in your professional life, And so um, I was fortunate, like I said, to have run into some folks who opened my eyes to a lot of very deep insights around these things that I was never taught in my training,
Mhm. Mhm.
and really didn't find in a lot of places. Um, but when you find that kind of stuff, it's like gold, and you start to be able to soak it up and use it, see that it turns things around in your life, and then you go, share those principles with the people you're working with and pass them on to them. So I did a lot of seminars and workshops as I learned things. I put them in the seminars and workshops. And then you do a seminar and workshop with 100 people, spend a couple of days with them. You get to learn a lot from them
Mhm.
as they're
Mhm.
sharing their difficulties, and we're working through them together. So you just keeps expanding your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding of human problems and human life just gets broader and broader as you go along. And then you have more to share with people. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say your approach is more like kind of awakening, like self-awareness, so that
yes,
people
very
can
much.
just deal with their problems head on rather than just, kind of push them aside. Is that
Right,
it?
but it's not the thing. Self-awareness is interesting because it can't be kind of global.
Huh.
It's got to be very specific. So
Uh-huh.
you have to help people become aware of very specific patterns.
Mm.
You can't just tell somebody, oh, get more self-awareness.
Mhm. Mhm.
Become more self-aware. Self-aware of what? You know.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you have somebody who's getting angry, for example,
Mm.
frequently, you can have them become self-aware of the precise causes of that emotion that are automatically going on in them, and you can have teach them how to identify them and pinpoint them very specifically, and that will empower them to be able to understand where their anger is coming from, so they can turn it on and off whenever they want to. Whereas most of us don't feel like we have the ability to do that, or we wouldn't even believe that it's possible, you know.
Mhm.
But it
Mhm.
is very possible to turn anger on and off whenever you want, or to get provoked by somebody and feel angry, and then within 15, 20 minutes shut it off by understanding, by working at its getting at its root causes and working with those causes, so you just don't feel angry anymore, or you don't get angry in the first place when things start to happen. So those are very precise self-awarenesses that you can teach people. But I found it doesn't help people to just say, I want you to work on becoming more self-aware. You have to show them exactly what it is they need to be self-aware of, and then
Mm.
let them see those things actually happening in their own life. But it's very specific. It's not broad like a lot of us think about it.
Okay, so let me give you a scenario. Let's say I was in, like driving around, and then this somebody just cut me off. So then I get mad. So what would you say to me?
Yeah, yes. I'd say you're human. It's a very natural experience. I would say to you, do you understand why? Do you understand how you had to be thinking in that moment in order to get angry and not some other emotion like sadness or fear or guilt? How did you have to be thinking about that incident, somebody cutting you off, that produced the emotion of anger?
Oh, maybe I was like, if somebody cut me off and it was like just suddenly, it's like, oh my God, danger, danger. That person could have hit me, right? When they just go in front of me really fast, right? So I guess
Right?
that anger is provoked by a sense of um, like danger that, something could have happened, something really bad could have happened if, you've been too
Yeah, that's
close or
part of it.
whatever.
That's one piece. That's one piece of it. But there's a couple other pieces that come first
Huh.
that you might not have focused on yet.
Okay, so focused on yet. So kind of lead me through
And
it.
again, and again, and again, you can't just tell somebody to focus unless you tell them what to focus on. So, uh,
Right.
so let me tell you. So here, in order to get angry, you have to be thinking in a very specific way. Now, a lot of times it's unconscious. We don't. It's not like we have these conscious thoughts. But for example, the first thing you have to do to get angry at somebody is to assume that what they did was wrong or bad or wrong in some way.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So
Okay.
somebody cutting you off in traffic, that was bad, right? They
For
shouldn't have
me?
cut you off in traffic, correct?
Yeah, probably. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's dangerous.
yeah. So, well, and that's the second reason, because the other thing that if someone hurts you or harms you, or hurts or harms somebody else, that's another component of anger. So the person had to do something bad or wrong. As a result of that, somebody was hurt or harmed or almost hurt or harmed.
Right,
Okay?
threat, right.
Right. And then there's a third piece to the puzzle of anger, and that has to do with blame. So the person is to blame for what they did wrong, for whatever hurt or harm they may have caused or almost caused in someone. And
Uh-huh.
it's usually not just any kind of blame, it's usually what I call unilateral blame, which means they are totally to blame.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, right.
And you had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm,
Okay?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
It's very one sided.
mm-hmm.
Okay? So, for example, I used to do the exact same thing. I used to get very worked up in my car when people would cut me off in traffic. I used to honk the horn and, make all kinds of gestures and get all angry and worked up and everything, until one day I happened to be driving down the road and somebody cut me off in traffic, and I'm starting to get angry at them. And I realized I was going like 80 miles an hour
Mm-hmm,
when they
mm-hmm,
pulled in from an entrance ramp, and
mm-hmm,
I was like right on top of them.
mm-hmm,
And I
mm-hmm.
realized, like, oh, gee, I remember times when I was in that same situation where I wasn't being uncourteous or acting in a bad manner. I thought I had more time to get on the ramp, but I didn't realize the other person was going very fast, as fast as they were
Right,
going.
right.
So at that moment, I realized that it wasn't a unilateral blame situation. I couldn't just blame that person exclusively
Mm-hmm.
for cutting me off. I realized that I played a role in the matter in bringing that on. And the minute I saw that, I couldn't stay angry with the person, because in order
Mm-hmm.
to stay angry, you have to see that you blame in a unilateral way. You have to see that
Right.
person as almost totally responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in reality, a lot of times that's not how life goes. In that case, I played just as much of a role probably as the other person did.
Mm-hmm.
They misjudged my speed, but I was the one speeding. And if I hadn't been going 80 miles an hour, it probably wouldn't have happened. So, it's that kind of stuff. So, but those are the three components of anger. So anytime you're angry, you're always judging somebody to be bad or wrong. You're always judging that somebody could have been hurt, harmed, or inconvenienced, or was hurt, harmed, or inconvenienced, and that
Mm-hmm.
somebody was unilaterally to blame.
Right.
So those are three very specific thought patterns. And anytime you're angry, or anytime any human being is angry, I don't care who they are, what country they live in, what language they speak, if they're angry, which everybody has the capacity to do,
Mm-hmm.
you can bet that they're thinking in those three ways. Okay.
Right.
Now, the real cool thing to ask is, okay, that's how I'm automatically thinking whenever I'm angry. Now, are those three things absolutely true?
Mm.
It feels like they're true,
Mm.
and I'm reacting as if they're true,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all automatic. It's a knee-jerk reflex. It's a
Mm-hmm.
habit of thought and perception. My body is doing it, whether it's right or wrong, or correct or not. Okay? Now, but I have an opportunity as a human being, now that I know where anger comes from, now that I have that specific self-awareness now of what causes anger in human beings, I can now take each one of those three components or causes and look at each one individually. Is it true they did something bad or wrong? We were talking earlier off camera, really off camera, when when we were talking about how you can judge somebody to be doing something bad or wrong when actually they're just doing it differently than the way you would do it. And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just different than how you would, and you automatically judge that to be a bad thing or a wrong thing. And in truth, if you stopped and asked yourself, did they really do something bad or wrong? And you have to say, well, not really. They just did it differently than I would do it. You know?
Yeah.
Same thing about hurt or harm. You get this automatic conclusion that somebody was hurt or harmed, but were they really hurt or harmed? You know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if somebody, let's say you've been functioning badly in your job, and you've been making a lot of mistakes, and you've been costing opportunity and money, and your boss comes down on you real hard and yells at you, and your feelings get hurt, and you get angry because your feelings got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, were you really hurt? Was that feedback that you were getting from your boss that you really need to, you know, improve your performance? It was harsh, but were you
Mm-hmm.
really hurt in the process? Nah, not really. Yeah, your
Mm-hmm.
feelings got a little offended, but you weren't damaged. It's not like somebody, punched you in the face or something. They a little harshly, criticized you, and that if you took that criticism to heart and improved your performance, you could be, better for it.
Mm-hmm.
So is it true that you were really hurt or harmed by that? Yeah, you might be angry at your boss for coming down on you that way. But when you stop and ask yourself that question, did he really hurt me? Did he really do something bad by pointing out to me very severely that I'm not functioning the way I need to? Now, again, bosses can sometimes be overcritical and go over the top with that. But let's just say it was appropriate, that it was appropriate to be a little demonstrative, a little bit forceful in the feedback. You can look at that and say, well, I probably did, he probably really didn't do something that was wrong there. That's his job as boss to motivate me, teach me what I need to do, give me the feedback when I need it. And by the way, he didn't hurt me. Yeah, he didn't really hurt me. Yeah, I felt hurt, but he didn't really hurt me. So, like I say, you can take each one of those causes, and then was your boss unilaterally to blame for all of a sudden yelling at you?
No.
Did you have nothing to do with that? No, you had everything to do with that. So
Right.
the whole idea of unilateral blame, like, hey, I didn't do anything. I didn't deserve that. Yes, you did. You did a lot to deserve that.
Mm-hmm.
So all three of those automatic ways of thinking when that person would get angry in that scenario, all three of them would be not really true. They would just feel true in the moment, and that's what would cause them to be angry. But if they knew what the puzzle pieces were and they could stop and look at it and ask themselves honestly, because you have to be willing to be honest about these things. Is it really true? A, B, and C. A lot of times you'll find out that one or more of those automatic ways of thinking and looking at things are not valid. And then you got angry for nothing. And then as soon as you see that, you're going like, oh, then the anger's gone.
Mm.
Literally. When I realized I was going 80 miles an hour that day, I wanted to be angry. I couldn't. I couldn't feel angry, because I realized it wasn't that person's fault totally, that I played a role in it, and then that completely blew the whole story behind the anger that was driving the anger, and I just couldn't. It disappeared in an instant.
Right. Right.
So that is possible with emotions. It's possible to get insight into your emotions and to understand, become more self-aware of what the causes are in a very precise way. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
in a very accurate and precise way that can give you power over emotions in certain situations that you might not have had it before. So that's why I love doing that with people, showing people how to do that, teaching them how to do that. And you can do that with almost any emotion. You can pinpoint the the 2 or 3 specific ways of looking at things that drive that emotion, and you teach that to people. I even, in a book that I wrote 20 years ago, I put all those things on index cards.
Uh-huh.
All the causes of like 6 of the most common emotions on index cards, so that people can have them to practice with, so they can, they can learn, almost like training wheels on a bicycle. So you can learn, what's driving your emotions, and then, once you learn that information, you don't need the cards anymore. You like taking the training wheels off the bike, and then you're just going through life understanding why emotions are happening to you and other people. Really kind of very powerful.
Oh, talking about
Yeah.
books, you actually wrote a lot of Kindle books, right? I mean, you're like up to date with all these new technologies and things. So
Yeah, I've recently published 5 or 6 Kindle books, and they've been a lot of fun. They're short books, but they're very again, they try and identify problems like this. Like there's one called The Irritability Cure, which deals with what we were just talking about, with the mechanism of anger in human beings.
Mhm.
There's one on test anxiety for students or people who have trouble with examinations. They get really nervous. Well, you have to understand the emotion of fear. You have to understand what specifically is driving fear. Similarly, I have a book on panic attacks, which is the same kind of understanding. You have to understand what's happening to you when you're starting to panic.
Mhm.
And then I have one on forgiveness, which is sort of
Mhm.
the flip side of anger,
Mhm.
how you do that. And a couple more. I'm trying to remember what. There's one called Stress Relief Wisdom, which is just 10 really powerful distinctions that can really help open up your eyes to what's really going on in life and empower you in life and help you have less stress as a consequence. So, yeah, I really enjoy writing those kinds of books because they're easy to do now. You can get your teachings out to people in a very easy fashion for them to consume. They don't have to sit there and read a 300-page book. They can read a 60-page Kindle book, in a couple hours and get a really important life lesson that's very valuable. And so I enjoy doing that, and I hope to be doing more of those as time goes on.
And you blog too at www.ormanstressrelief.com, right?
Yes,
You
yes.
blog regularly.
I have a blog that I've been doing for a couple of years now, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I'm just about ready to. This Friday actually will be my 300th blog post.
Wow.
So there's plenty of really cool information there. It's very different. That the articles that I write and the blog posts I write are like most of the other things I do, completely opposite to what most people are talking about and doing in the stress industry today. They try to show people again how to pinpoint some of these internal causes of stress and why that's important and what's limiting about the things they're being taught today and why they should be careful not to
Mhm.
believe everything that they've been told about stress,
Mhm.
think for themselves to get some more new insights, question a lot of what they've been told, and then to get some guidance on what some of the better ways are to think about stress and understand it.
Mhm. Mhm. So, um, yeah, I want to kind of end with how are you living your splendid life? How did you design your life so that you're living a life full of splendor?
Well, actually, I am. It's really I can't say that was always the case for me. I think, as I've told you before, my life. I'm 65 now. I can divide my life into like two 30-some year periods, and the first 30-some years, I was a basket case when it came to stress. I was very stressed. Didn't have a clue as to what to do about it. Failed repeatedly to try and manage my stress and deal with my stress. And then I had that couple-year period where I gained some very deep insights, got to understand that most of what I was taught about stress wasn't really true, found
Mhm.
out what some of the things are that are true about stress and how to look at it in a better way. And then the last 30 years of my life have been just fantastic, just beyond my wildest dreams, that I never could have believed that I would have been able to not have the anger and the anxiety and the frustration and the relationship conflicts and all the stuff that I struggled with for so many years, to have them all drop away, to almost where I almost never get angry these days, and if I do, I can get rid of it very quickly. Same thing with anxiety. I used to be a nervous wreck speaking like this. I mean, I could never do this. And now it's like fun. It's enjoyable. It's not stressful.
Mhm.
Um, and then I have so many things that I'm doing, and I'm able to do them without being stressed by them because I've identified some of the pitfalls of thinking and some of the behavioral pitfalls that could make that those difficult to juggle. And I'm able to still take on a lot, but not too much. I'm able to say no when I need to. I'm able to understand what's nurturing to me and what excites me, and do more of that, and drop off some of the things that are not.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of skill sets that go into all that I've acquired over the years, but it's really kind of cool to be able to go through life relatively unstressed when everybody else around you is like not believing that's possible.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And
it's,
and then to be able to teach other people how to do that is really on top of it is very cool too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I really appreciate you giving us the time and, opening our eyes to a whole new way of seeing stress. So,
Uh huh.
so thank you again and for bearing with me my technical difficulties.
No
Okay.
problem. No problem. Yep, I
Uh,
enjoyed it. Thank you very much. I'm happy to kick off your new show for you, and I wish you lots of success. I think you'll do a great service to people. So
okay.
thanks. Yeah.
Appreciate it. So now I'm gonna try to end the broadcast.
Mhm.